if you look at the world around you, it is not a surprise that women are connecting everywhere. They're talking to each other in online forums, in blogs, face-to-face, on the phone, texting, and so on. Social networking, as we know, is spreading like wildfire. What is still confusing and interesting and needs to be figured out and is changing every day is how marketers should think about these connections, how we should activate them, where we should play, where we shouldn't play. And this is what Connectonomics is all about. Marketing effectiveness, we believe, is a function of three things. It's a function of needs. What is fundamentally important to women as women, and women when they're connecting to other women, and women in their online spaces. Channels. Why does she use different digital channels? Who is she connecting with? Where is she getting information? Where is she sharing information? How frequently does she do these things? And finally, questions of advertising. Where is she most receptive? Where is she getting product information? Finally, how is she making those buying decisions? Some of the most interesting differences we saw were when we mapped stay-at-home women versus women who worked out of home and moms versus non-moms, because you really, as marketers are so used to thinking of these types of women in fundamentally or radically different buckets. But what we found quite counterintuitively was these women, again, at a fundamental core need state level, had more in common than they had different. They wanted deep relationships. There were times when they needed to release and escape. They needed to take care of themselves and to improve themselves. And this, for us, was quite compelling. And I started to think about how marketers should think about these, and this was quite empowering for me. What I found is, ultimately as a marketer, it's kind of, you probably are not just targeting a single woman who lives in Chicago, who doesn't have children, and who's a boomer, right? Most of our products and services actually cut across a swath of women. So understanding the underlying commonalities was quite empowering to me, in addition to understanding the differences in how they use channels. Of course, those differences exist, and we'll get to them in a moment. So again, moms versus non-moms, fundamental commonality at a basic level. So to quickly sort of summarize this before we go on to the next section, what we found is that much is made of the perceived differences between women, but there's an underlying commonality of needs that are consistent and really quite interesting, and these needs are really about personal growth and connecting with others. It's about interdependency, it's about improving your life, it's about improving your relationships, and being a better person. But what's really interesting is how online channels start to deliver on fundamental needs for women. Because women need to grow, they need to connect. And online has taken sort of almost the feminist promise to a whole new level. Because feminism was all about connecting with other women, interdependency, learning, sharing. You're not alone. You're not the only one who's, depressed or feeling fat or whatever. But in online, you have this massive sisterhood of women, certainly around the country. Also, perhaps in your neighborhood, whom you share things with and you can talk to. And there's something quite powerful and unique there. So let's begin with women's lifestyles, lifestyle sites, Shine, iVillage, and others among them. These are quite incredible. They have all the wonderfulness about women's magazines, but then they're also conversations. They're places where you can connect, you can talk to real people. So it's magazines taken to a whole new level. And what we found is they satisfy pretty much all need states. They help women be more satisfied emotionally, but they also help them be smarter consumers, which is a really sort of powerful mix of needs that this channel is satisfying. Special interest sites, and there's a whole range of things that fit into special interest sites. There are DIY sites, there are scrapbooking sites, but there's also Cafe Mom, Baby Center, and things more specifically in the parenting world. And they're special interests, right? So they're speaking to your interests, so obviously they're powerful and they address a range of need states. And what is really interesting about special interest sites is this is where you really talk to those people, those women who are like you, but you don't necessarily know her. They're women who are going through the same things I'm going through, women who care about the same things that I care about, women who have the same passions as me, but I don't necessarily have to run into them in the grocery store. And you'll see this unpacks an interesting set of relationships. Review sites. Women don't buy anything without reading reviews anymore. That was one of my aha moments from doing this study, because whether you're booking a trip, whether you're buying home electronics, or really when you're thinking about the brand of diapers or something as specific as that, women really trust the peer-to-peer advice that they get from review sites. And it speaks to a very specific need. This need for bargain hunting, this need to be smarter and more enabled. It's a narrower set of needs, but incredibly powerful in a marketing context. Blogs are really interesting as well. Blogs are interesting because they're about improving yourself, they're about being smarter, but this is also where you can get a little bit edgy, because you can be following a blogger who's kind of like you, but the edgier you, the sexier you, the one who's more willing to put herself out there. So there's an interesting cross-section of needs. Twitter works, but works for a minority, and you'll see some actual numbers for how many people use Twitter and so on. And Twitter satisfies a specific set of needs that is quite different from some of the other needs we have seen. This is really for being in the know, being the best, social and upping the ante, social currency, and so on. So it does work for a smaller cluster of women. Social networking, similar to email, quite ubiquitous. An interesting set of relationships happen in social networking. On the one hand, you can be close and you can share with a whole swath of people in your lives. What women are also talking to us about, though, is that their social networking is, in a sense, their best self. It's their cocktail party self, right? Because you're talking about the great vacation you just had. You're telling all those people you knew from 20 years ago in high school about what you've done, where you live. Show them some pictures from your house and so on. So there's a lot of communication that is obviously happening. It is instant. It is also release and share, release and escape. But women are also aware of not putting too much out there. When it comes to something ultimately that's really personal, when it's about your relationships and whether your husband is cheating on you or not, when it comes to something even simpler like needing to save money on groceries, because of your financial situation, when it comes to how to handle your toddler when he or she is having a breakdown in that grocery store aisle, you are not turning to your immediate circle. You are not turning to email, social networking sites, or any of this on the left side of the slide. You're really turning for that advice in areas you're vulnerable to women's lifestyle sites, special interest sites, review sites, and other places where the women are like you, but you can still be anonymous and safe. And very specifically, information about products and brands are primarily from content side. You really, when you're on a social network, it's still, it's like a bar, it's a conversation, and you'll see the numbers for social networking versus content sites about 5 to 6 times higher when it comes to getting information about products or brands, reading reviews, and so on. So if you start to map all of these connections and conversations, there are a couple of different axes here. You have relationships where you're ultimately accountable. These are people you run into in your so-called real life. And this is social networking, this is IM, and so on. And you have relationships where you're anonymous, right? Like on review sites. You have casual connections, you have wide connections in social networking in IM, but you have deeper connections specifically in content sites. This is where you can have access to like-minded women, you can have solutions to your problems without the risk of being judged. So anonymity and depth occur in quite non-intuitive contexts with women who are like you, but whom you don't necessarily know. So on the one hand, you have places where the ads are engaging, the ads are interesting, they're tailored specifically to me, and the ads are relevant. And that's the pink, yellow, and green bar there. And those are, again, highest on women's lifestyle sites, special interest sites, and review sites, and they fall off as you move towards traditional communication. And then when you ask the reverse of the question, I don't pay attention to ads here, that's far more true of social networking sites. That's where the lines really spike. Because again, it's your personal space, it's your bar, it's your friends, and brand conversations are currently seen as an intrusion. We do not believe this is necessarily always going to be true. This is a moment in time. This is what is happening today. Social networking is in its nascency. It's going to look very different 5 years from now. But women are telling us that social networking in its current incarnation is not necessarily the place where I want to be marketed to by brands in the traditional sense. And we all need to work together to figure out how they do want to be marketed to, how they do want to be engaged in those spaces. And when you literally start talking to them and almost interrogating them about purchase decisions, informs me about new products, introduces me to brands I hadn't heard of, encourages me to try out new products, helps me make the right decision, it's all about the content sites and to a certain extent blogs and online communities, all the dark green stuff there. And the same holds true for when she's trying to find a deal, when she's trying to get access to savings, trying to make sure she doesn't miss out on a good deal and so on. Again, you know, women's lifestyle sites, not just because advertising in context makes sense, but also because you're communicating with women who have the same kind of needs as you, makes this possible.